Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at another awful case with you. The Pike County Carnage. The crime committed against 8 Rhoden family members became one of Ohio's most renowned and difficult cases. Overnight, the maxim all for one and one for all became disastrous for each family member. Only little children were spared from the widespread violence. The probe stretched across 10 states in the United States. Detectives performed over 600 interviews, collecting about 700 witness accounts. Several ideas were investigated, including self-harm, retaliation from illegal drug traffickers, and cult sacrifices. Attorney General Mike DeWine suspected local residents of hiding critical information. The study appeared to have reached a dead end until a solution appeared on the surface. As it turns out, the most complex problems are frequently founded in simplicity. This story shows how familial relationships evolved into a slaughter. In Pike County, Ohio, USA, it all started with a crush. Anna Mae Rhoden was 13 when she met 18-year-old Edward Jake Wagner. The young man asked her to the prom. They were inseparable since that evening. Their relationship aroused mixed emotions. Unquestionably, the love that grew between them was obvious to the naked sight. On the other side, the age gap prompted numerous questions and concerns. However, the young couple's parents did not interfere with their relationship. After all, everyone has been young once. Over time, the Rhoden and Wagner families began spending weekends and gatherings together. Love was passionate and carefree. Hannah disclosed her pregnancy at the age of 15. Jake was pleased when he heard the news. He anticipated how excited his family would be about the new addition. The Wagners cherished traditions and bloodline, and so adored children. They considered them as a continuation of their bloodline. Even ancestral names were passed down across generations. Jake's father was George Wagner, IEE, and his brother was George Wagner Ive. The Rhodens, on the other hand, had a more modest attitude to children, but this did not reduce their family values. Hannah's parents, Christopher and Dana Rhoden, were very close and bonded despite their divorce. They adored their 3 children and worked tirelessly to ensure their well-being. Unlike the Wagners, the Rhodens had a small income. Christopher, 40, worked as a handyman at the Big Bear Lake family complex, and Dana, 37, was a nurse's aide at a youth rehabilitation center. Nonetheless, they instilled humanity and diligence in Christopher Jr., Hannah, Clarence, and Frankie. Everyone was overjoyed when little Sophie arrived. To commemorate her birthday, a large party was planned. Soon after, Jake proposed that Hannah move in with him and his family, claiming that it would make life more pleasant for both of them, a point difficult to argue when living in a trailer. His logic seemed sound, but Hannah declined. By then, she had a better understanding of her partner and interpreted the invitation as an attempt to curtail her independence. Furthermore, the once loving and attentive young man had developed suspicion and aggression. Jake had used physical aggressiveness on numerous occasions. His aggressive behavior dampened Hannah's affections for him. Her reluctance became a point of controversy among the Wagners. Sophie's parents were now desperate to acquire complete custody of the girl. The families started advocating for their own interests. Driven by his ambition, Jake threatened his lover when she refused to sign a contract transferring custody rights to him and his brother. In a fit of rage, he messaged her and threatened to take the daughter by force. "If you genuinely loved her, you would not be able to resist. You would have given her up long ago to be reared in a healthy atmosphere," he stated. For some reason, he thought the Rhodens were a danger to Sophie. Such debates persisted for 2 years, during which Jake became increasingly authoritarian. Hannah grew bored of being in complete control and dissolved the relationship in March 2015. Furthermore, she had learned something alarming. It turned out that Jake's brother, George Eve, had taken custody of a son by frightening the boy's mother with a weapon. This proved that the Wagners viewed moral and physical compulsion as legitimate methods. To keep herself and her daughter safe from this unethical household, the young rodent chose to separate herself. She intended to raise her daughter alone while working as a nurse's assistant and finishing school. The situation deteriorated when everyone learned of Hannah's pregnancy. Jake questioned her allegation that the child was from another man. he attempted to find out if she was dating and deteriorated anybody else. So, in December 2015, he hacked her social media accounts and discovered nothing incriminating. At the end of his quest, he discovered that the woman was communicating with George Ivy's previous mother-in-law, which piqued his attention. A court case was soon to follow, during which the Wagners had numerous interactions with the woman. "They'll have to kill me before they can take possession of my daughter," Hannah stated in her message. Jake infuriated his family when he revealed the details of the correspondence. Then his maternal grandmother, Rita Newcomb, 65, faked a vital custody papers. Furthermore, during a court hearing to decide the granddaughter's residency, Christopher Roden and George Wagner, IEE, had a major argument. The family's relationship eventually deteriorated totally. The Wagner family soon came up with a dreadful idea. Hannah was so uncooperative that they felt compelled to destroy her, as well as the entire Roden family, who may potentially claim custody of Sophie. This wild concept evolved into a huge scheme that was finalized by Christmas 2016. People's thoughts during the holiday season are typically focused on love and creation, but the Wagner couple, who organized a vote, did not share that sentiment. It was decided if they would carry out their scheme. Every family member agreed. The only thing left to do was allocate duties and prepare. 5 months were spent researching the Roden residences and surveillance cameras, paying close attention to their daily routines and work schedules. Everyone involved in the criminal operation was accountable for something. For example, Angela Wagner purchased sneakers for all family members to wear at a specific time. To keep the victims from seeking help, she purchased a communication blocking gadget and planned to discreetly place it on the Rodens' phones. To reduce noise, George, III, recommended creating handmade silencers. He also handled the transportation on the night of the crime, ensuring that it would not draw notice. Sophie was to remain safe at home with Angela because the court had granted Hannah and Jake shared custody. The Wagners chose a moment when it was their turn to care for the girl, methodically preparing every detail to ensure a perfect execution. On the night of April 21, 2016, George Wagner, EE, decided to pay Christopher Roden a visit, reportedly to give him a job opportunity that would help his financial circumstances. The job offer was simply a ruse to obtain admission into the home. Roden Sar unexpectedly opened the door. Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister, arrived at Christopher's trailer at 8 p.m. on April 22nd, 2016. She did this every day since he offered her a job. Bobby cared for the Roden family's animals. She observed someone inside, which was odd at the time when everyone was going about their business. Christopher and his cousin Gary, 38, lying in a pool of blood inside the trailer. The men lived together. In terror, she contacted 911 and reported what she had seen, demanding help at 4077 Union Hill Road. Bobby, shocked, went to the homes of his other relatives. She gave a loud knock on one of their doors. Soon, Clarence Roden's kid, a 3-year-old boy, appeared. She questioned where his parents were, but he did not react, instead pointing to the bed. She shrieked as she entered the house and saw Clarence and his wife, Hannah Hazel, both 20 years old. The couple was dead, and their 6-month-old infant was alive but splattered with his parents' blood. Following Bobby's 911 call, the cops went straight to the supplied address. As they neared the Roden property, a neighbor stopped them. Sensing difficulty, he requested that the officers verify 2 more addresses of the family members. He was correct. In the third trailer, police discovered bloodied bodies. Dana, Hannah, 19, and Christopher, 16, were identified as the victims. The attackers spared Hannah's youngest kid, a baby girl who was just a few days old. Later, another victim was discovered, 44-year-old Kenneth, the elder Roden's brother, who lived a 15-minute walk away. By 2 p.m., 8 victims had been identified. Christopher, Dana, Clarence, Hannah Hazel, Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, Kenneth, and Gary. The only survivors were 3 little children, a 3-year-old, a 6-month-old infant, and a 4-day-old newborn, as well as 2-year-old Sophie, who was at the Wagner's home at the time of the tragedy. After investigating the bodies, authorities concluded that all of the victims had died in their sleep from gunshot wounds. Detectives eventually pieced together the events of that night. The patriarch of the family was awake when the intruders broke into the house, as proven by a wound on his right arm. Christopher attempted to protect himself, but received 9 shots to the head, body, and extremities. Dana Roden had 5 bullets extracted from her neck and skull. The remaining members of the family were slain by gunshot wounds to the head. Gary was shot 5 times, Christopher Jr. 4 times, Clarence and his wife Hannah 3 times, and Hannah Mae twice. Kenneth was the only person to be shot once. The intruders fired 32 rounds in total, including some posthumously. In addition, bruises were discovered on some of the bodies, indicating physical mistreatment. Because no one in the vicinity heard anything, authorities decided that the criminals utilized silencers, indicating a well-planned and performed act. It was apparent that the victims were not chosen at random. Someone wanted to exact revenge on the entire family. During the search, investigators discovered 5 different types of Remington round casings, as well as 1 unused bullet from another rifle model. Furthermore, the scattered form of the trailer suggested that more than one person committed the crime. Dana's father, Leonard Manley, claimed that the perpetrators knew the Rodens well. Otherwise, the dogs would have been barking all over the Pike. The question of who would dare to perform such an act kept police personnel preoccupied. The Attorney General's office provided more than $20,000 for the Roden family's funeral. The deceased were interred in multiple phases. Gary was the first victim, buried on April 28, 2016 at South Shore, Kentucky. He was followed by Hannah Hazel, whose farewell was conducted on May 1. Benotway, Seattle County, Ohio. The other fatalities were buried on May 3 in West Portsmouth, the same county. Many locals gathered to bid the family farewell and give their respects. The surviving children were placed in the custody of relatives. A wave of panic rushed through the area. The police warned the Rodens' relatives to exercise caution and advised other Pike residents to stay away from their homes at night. The cold-blooded mass murder angered locals across the state, who requested that the investigation's findings be made public and the murderers arrested as quickly as possible. Jeff Ruby, a Cincinnati businessman, offered $25,000 for information that could help arrest and punish those responsible for the murder, but he later refused the offer. The investigating task group, working on the Roden case, had almost 100 people. Following the burials as part of the investigation, 3 trailers belonging to the deceased family were taken away. The next day, numerous additional vehicles met the same fate and were taken to a secure location. This was done to protect the deceased's personal items while also preserving evidence. Following the investigation, the family's cars and agricultural equipment were scheduled to be restored to the victims' relatives. Forensic experts joined the probe. Trailers were extensively inspected. However, no DNA from the suspects was discovered in any of them. Cameras were installed in the mobile homes, but they also produced no information because they had been disabled. The perpetrators methodically prepared every element of the act. It appeared that there were no substantial leads until police unearthed one. Cannabis crops were discovered at 3 crime scenes. There were perhaps 200 plants in one site. Officers suspected the cannabis was produced for sale rather than personal use, prompting speculation about the participation of Mexican drug smugglers. However, the amount of cannabis discovered was insufficient to support an attack by an entire cartel. In January 2017, a close cousin of the Roden family was arrested for cocaine trafficking, which was deemed an unrelated occurrence. Leonard Manley claimed that his daughter had no involvement in the cannabis operations. "They're trying to drag Dana through the mud, and I don't like it," he said. Some family members verified that the older brothers Christopher and Kenneth Roden grew marijuana, although they were unaware of any large-scale production. The hypothesis of a family conflict over illegally obtained funds was also refuted. Along with the illicit narcotics, specialized equipment for growing hens for cockfighting, as well as cages with fighting cocks, were discovered at the killings. Months passed without learning the exact motive for the crime. Local authorities announced on April 13, 2017, that there was insufficient evidence to make any arrests. Nonetheless, prosecutor Rob Young noted that the investigation was ongoing, implying that they had some leads they were not yet ready to share. Another year passed, and the second anniversary of the mass murder received minimal notice, with no coverage in the local press and no sheriff or prosecutor attending the memorial service. The community assumed that the probe had come to a halt. Unexpectedly, on May 12, 2017, a SWAT team invaded a residence in Pike County, 10 miles from the crime scene, ostensibly looking for suspects, but later discovered to be gathering evidence. Detectives also searched a residence in Adams County that Jake Wagner formerly owned, but had sold by then. On June 20, 2017, the inquiry openly moved its emphasis to the Wagner family. Jake, 27, George II, 47, and Angela, all 47 to 10 miles away from the victims. The Wagners had relocated to Kenaya, Alaska, having difficulty settling in the area. They claimed to have loved the Roden family and that their deaths caused them great pain. Rob Young's words from a year ago proved correct. As the inquiry had reached a breakthrough and was now seeking public information on the Wagners' chats regarding firearms, ammunition, automobiles, and so on 2 years prior. It wasn't long until the suspects, desperate for money, returned to Ohio, where investigators had amassed enough evidence to make arrests, including proof Jake had accessed Hannah's account. During the inspection of the Wagner family's gadgets, search requests for guardianship were identified. It was also discovered that Angela had bought sneakers for the entire family just a few weeks before the crime. The tread pattern on one of these matched that of one of the trailers. Officers felt Angela was the architect of the awful operation, with Jake serving as the primary executioner. According to the investigation, all family members were complicit in the unlawful crime. On November 13, 2018, the Attorney General announced the arrests of the Wagner couple and their sons. They were entrusted for organizing and carrying out life-ending procedures. Rita Newcomb, Angela's 65-year-old mother, and Frederica Wagner, George I.A.'s mother, were both detained. They were charged with perjury and obstruction of justice. Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis in 2019, proving her involvement in the forgery of Sophie's guardianship paperwork. Later, to escape incarceration, she agreed to a plea agreement. The allegations filed against Frederica Wagner were withdrawn in June 2019. The other Wagners stayed detained after refusing to participate with the investigation. They denied any role in the Rodens' deaths and expressed sadness for their loss, requesting that the true offenders be apprehended. However, on April 22, 2021, 5 years after the horrific incident, Jake chose to reach an agreement with the prosecution. The arrangement said that he would reveal details of the crime in exchange for all family members receiving life sentences, rather than the death punishment. Wagner Jr. acknowledged to killing 5 out of 8 people. He pleaded guilty to 23 criminal crimes, including 8 counts of severe felony. The remaining charges were burglary, conspiracy, illegal possession of dangerous ammunition, forgery of evidence and documents, interception of telegrams and oral messages, unauthorized use of property, obstruction of justice, participation in corrupt activities, and unlawful intimate conduct with a young woman. He stated that removing the mother was the only way to ensure custody of his daughter. By killing Hannah, he felt forced to do the same to the other rats, afraid that they would seek vengeance and refuse to release the girl. Angela was the next person to stand trial. On September 10, she pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated felony, robbery, and evidence tampering. She also consented to testify against the remaining accused. In exchange, the charge of killing a person was withdrawn. Angela was sentenced to 30 years in jail. The trial of George Wagner started on August 28, 2022. The man denied any involvement in the crimes and claimed he was absolutely uninformed. In contrast, the prosecution claimed he was involved in the crimes: preparation, execution, and concealment. Ultimately, Georgiev was found guilty on 22 counts and condemned to life in jail without the chance of release. The trial of George IEE is slated for February 2024. Despite the fact that his entire family has been convicted, he maintains his innocence and will most likely face the same fate as his older son. This once harmonious relationship ended tragically. The Wagners' combined madness is inexplicable and beyond forgiving. Their acts rendered 3 children orphans. What happens to Sophie when she grows up and understands what happened? In their pursuit of custody and a false sense of well-being, the Wagners deprive the young girl of loving parents, relatives, and a calm childhood,